We'll begin by welcoming everyone to this January 26th meeting of the Select Board pursuant to the Acts of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, amended on March 28th of 2025. Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act extending pandemic-related authorizations related to public meetings, allowing remote meeting participation options for public bodies through June 30th, 2027. This meeting of the Select Board will be conducted via remote participation by the board, and I will grant Westwood Media Center permission to record and live stream the meeting, and would like to see, is there anyone else wishing to record the meeting? Okay, seeing none. Going to move into the chair's update. And I want to start with, a couple of things. One is just want to give a tremendous shout out to Todd Corchin, Brendan Ryan, and the entire DPW team. I was out and about a little bit today, and our roads are in outstanding shape. I think those folks have been working round the clock for the last 48 hours. They've basically gotten an entire week's worth of work in about 48 hours time, and our roads are looking great because of it. So thank you, Todd. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you to the entire DPW team. You guys are doing an amazing job, and we couldn't thank you enough. And we'll get into that's part of what the budget pays for when we get into the budget discussion with Stephanie later on. Next thing I want to touch on is the special town meeting that we have coming up a week from today at Westwood High School in the gymnasium. Check-in will begin at 5:30 in the lobby, and the official business is set to begin at 6:30 p.m. Everyone should have received a mailer, including the 4 articles and the Finance and Warrant Commission recommendations on those articles for you to preview prior to your arrival next week. And other than that, I think that's all I've got from a chair's update perspective. Molly, I'll turn it to you.
My only update is to reiterate your appreciation for Public Works, Police, Fire, and Public Safety Communication who have been working around the clock since Saturday. So thank you all.
Excellent. Okay. With that, we'll move into our public and press participation section. And during our public comment portion of the meeting, you can participate in one of the 2 following ways. You can speak live by being unmuted. We just ask that you raise your hand in the Zoom function to be unmuted, and we'll recognize you and let you know when you can begin speaking. Or you can submit written comments and questions into the Zoom Q&A function, not the chat function, the Q&A function. Regardless of your method, we would ask that you identify yourself by stating your full name and address, whether you're speaking live or putting it in the Q&A, and each speaker will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. While we will not be responding to questions at this time, we will be listening to all comments and concerns shared by the public. So with that, let me take a look and see. I see one attendee with a hand up. And I will recognize Angelica Evans. Angelica, if you begin with your address, and
I'll go unmute.
you are good to go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm Angelica Evans. I live at 365 Dover Road, and I have a very straightforward request for the Select Board members. At the upcoming special town meeting, please be transparent about what is really going on with a lawsuit against the Westwood Land Trust. People feel frustrated by the lack of answers, the stonewalling, and the perceived arrogance in your non-responsiveness to those seeking more information about the lawsuit and what led to it in the first place. Please help us restore the trust we placed on you when we voted for you, that you will work in the interest of all Westwood taxpayers, not just one individual. I look forward to receiving answers to the questions that the voters have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Next, I see a hand from Karen Manor. Karen, if you would unmute yourself or someone unmute Karen and just give us your address, please.
Karen Manor at 5 Long Meadow Drive. I would also like to thank the DPW, great work, and to all the staff and to our safety folks. I'm a member of Westwood Land Trust, Westwood resident for 28 years, on the Land Trust for 23 years. I thought with some of the questions and some historical information being in question regarding the conservation restrictions in general and conservation in the town, I was looking in some old files and came across a letter dated June 21st, 2000. It was addressed to Duncan and Ellen McFarland of 299 Clabbertree Street, and it's from the Board of Selectmen at that time, signed by the chair, Anthony Antonellis. And I just want to read this in for the record, because I think it sets a good tone back to the conservation efforts at this time. To Dear Duncan and Ellen, once again, the Board of Selectmen wants to express its sincere appreciation for your leadership and support of Westwood's efforts to preserve open space within the community. Over the last few years, the community, with your participation and encouragement to be bold, has acquired Lowell Woods, the Stryer parcels, 2 donated parcels, and a large portion of the Prout Farm, and has established the Westwood Land Preservation Society. The Board of Selectmen is interested in continuing the effort, especially its often stated vision of linking its major land holdings on Sandy Valley Road with the Lyman Pond school property between Gay and Nahatton Streets. The town has targeted 10 parcels, and there was an attached table and map that could provide access to Gay Street and enhance the linkage between the town's major land holdings. The board would appreciate any assistance you could provide in the acquisition of the parcels and/or conservation restrictions and trail easements. If you would like more information and to arrange to meet in early August to discuss, please call Mike Gillette, the executive secretary. And again, signed sincerely, Anthony Antonellis. As I mentioned, there were 10 parcels noted on here. Around 180 acres in total, starting from Lowell Woods and then proceeding south towards the high school. The first parcels listed were the Duffy parcels. Those we were not successful.
Aaron, I just want to remind you, we've got a 3-minute time limit.
Yep, thank you. And I just want to emphasize that of those 180 acres, almost 100, about 95, were purchased or acquired by the McFarlands, and conservations were put on most of those. So there was a really cooperative effort at that time and an interest by all for conservation. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. Oh, I see a new hand. I will recognize Lynn Vitti. Please give us your address, Lynn, when you start speaking.
Lynn Vitti, 37 Abbey Road. I would just like to request once again to this select board to please go to hybrid with in-person and Zoom meetings. We sit here and listen and we learn a lot, but we have no idea who's speaking. We hear voices or names spoken, but if we don't know those people, we would like to see how many people are here. We feel like we're living in some kind of Plato's cave. It's just we have 17 or 18 other boards and commissions that have resumed in-person meeting, and sometimes with hybrid, sometimes without. I renew my request. Please, this is not a complicated thing. You could do it in a heartbeat with the Media Center. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vitti. I see William Sellis of 175 Canton Street, who has put a comment into the Q&A. Could we please see the number of people on the call? Mr. Sellis, at this moment, there are 26 attendees on the call, some of whom have business before this board, some of whom are here listening and participating as you are. And that number changes throughout the course of the evening. So as people come and go, depending on the business they have before us, once their business is concluded, they often drop off. So at the current moment, 26 people. All right. I will give another moment in case anyone else has a question. Hearing none, seeing none, I will move into.
Nope, there's one more hand. Phil
Oh,
Shapiro.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's Phil Shapiro. Phil, if you could start with your address, please.
Phil Shapiro, 159 Mill Street. I just wanted to talk about the whole bean farm thing for a minute and sort of where it's going, why it's going, and whether it's the most important thing on our agenda or should be. And I know and like all of the three selectmen. I love Pat Ahern. But I just think there are so many more important things that we can be spending our time and attention and money on. And that this is something that is dividing a town that historically has never been that divided. But this, in addition to the fire station issue, has just got people angry, not talking to each other, not trusting government. And it's not a situation that I'm used to in Westwood. And I understand the town has rights. I'm not a lawyer, but I understand that. But when you exercise those rights and how you exercise those rights is important too. And I just think we've got so many more important things here. We've got to figure this fire station out. We've got to figure out what we can afford on a long term for our capital needs. Personally, I think we should join the MWRA and get pure water. I mean, we've got stuff that really impacts thousands of people's daily lives and health and safety. And we're messing around with this issue. And I just beg you to let it go. And if it's still a legal issue 5 years from now, let it come up 5 years from now. But when I was a selectman, it was we had the same rights. We just, for some reason, nobody ever brought it to our attention and we never did anything about it. But I would really ask that we think about whether this is the most important thing to be tearing our town apart. It's terrible. It's terrible. Please just think about it. Think about it. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shapiro. Okay. Hearing and seeing no further questions, I close public comment and move to scheduled action. We have a license agreement with Temple Beth David to install a sign in the public right-of-way. I believe Nora and Pat, you are taking the lead on this with us. So if you would, please.
Yeah, it's in your packet. It's a pretty straightforward document. I've reviewed it. I believe Nora could probably recite it. I spoke to counsel for Temple Beth David. I think we're all in agreement. This is a very reasonable thing for us to do. And I don't have any issues with it at this point in time from a legal perspective. It's going to allow them to have a lit sign right on Pond Street. Their attorney, Matt Watsky, their attorney, was most helpful in my discussion with him. Nora, I guess you can speak more to the planning board decision that allowed this to go forward. I would recommend that you sign it from a legal perspective.
So if I could just give just a little bit of background, the sign's actually on Clabbertree Street. It's as you turn off of Pond Street onto Clabbertree Street, it's right there on the right, just before the driveway. There has been an existing sign for the temple, a freestanding sign there for many, many years. It was recognized recently that the sign is within the public right of way. They are replacing the sign and moving it further back from the sidewalk. But because it's in the public right of way, a license is needed for them to occupy town land. So it's very similar to a sign that was approved, a license agreement that was approved for a sign for the First Parish Church on Manhattan Street. I don't remember the year. Maybe that was around 2017, 2018. But it's a very similar agreement, and it would just allow the new sign to have a new post set back a couple of feet from where it is today. The planning board reviewed this and granted a limited environmental impact design review approval for the sign.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Pat. Questions from either of my colleagues?
Not from me. Thank you.
I'm good, thanks, Rob. I'm just happy to see this coming to a closure.
Yeah, as well. So I would entertain a motion. I have no further questions on the issue. And
I'd be happy to. I make a motion the select board grant a license to Temple Beth David, 7 Clabbertree Street, for installation of a sign in the public right of way adjacent to the property, and to authorize the interim town administrator to sign the license agreement.
I second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, Joe,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay. Next up, we have our financial update and update regarding any articles. So I will turn it to Molly and Pat with respect to the articles, and I think then we'll get into Stephanie's budget update.
I have no updates for the board on our articles at this moment. Pat, do you have any?
I do not, Madam Interim Administrator. Yeah, I don't have anything to add at this point in time. Still, a lot of work still to be done.
Exactly.
Okay. Then I would turn it to Stephanie for our budget update.
Great, thank you. As usual, I have a presentation, so I'm just going to share my screen. All right, hoping you can see that okay.
We're good.
So tonight I'll be presenting on the overall FY27 proposed budget, including the municipal budget and the operating budget as a whole. Just to sort of go back in time for a minute, looking back over the past few months as a reminder only, the Board of Assessors presented at the tax classification hearing in November, and the final tax bills were mailed out to residents at the beginning of this month. So there's been a lot of activity in the assessor's office since then, with people coming in asking questions. At the December 8th Select Board meeting, we reviewed the details of the proposed FY27 capital budget and what those articles will look like when they're in front of town meeting, and then also gave an update on the current debt status. And then at your last meeting in January 5th, I gave a preview of the FY27 operating budget, which included revenue projections, fixed cost estimates, and a preliminary estimate of the municipal budget. So an update just from the overall finance department, not related to the budget. The FY25 audit was completed on time with no issues, which is great news. Lots of hard work goes into that from the finance team, so I want to thank them. The audit committee reviewed this document and was presented the details of the report from our third-party auditors. CBIZ is their name. So thank you for their hard work as well. That's a volunteer committee of 3 residents. We submitted the report to the GFOA and are hoping for another year of receiving the Financial Reporting Achievement Award, which will be announced in August. Upcoming meetings will cover any budget updates as we move along in the process. 2 key dates are the first week in February, which is per the town charter when we need to have a proposed budget ready to present to the board. We will then draft the municipal operating budget, and then February 11th is the budget presentation to the Finance and Warrant Commission. And with the public hearings for FinCom on March 24th and February 24th. I do want to start by thanking all town department heads for their hard work. I know I say this every year, but it really is a long process putting this budget together and them developing their well-rounded budgets within a lot of constraints. I really want to thank them. And then as well as the school superintendent, school finance director, school committee, select board, and FinCom for working together and collaborating through the budget steering meetings that we've had over the past few months. Specifically tonight, we'll be reviewing the proposed municipal budget and proposed overall budget, including a high-level summary of expenditures and revenues, and then a little bit more detail on the operating budget itself. The overall budget is currently balanced, which we'll go through on the following slides. Once these budgets are set, we then draft and distribute what's called the municipal budget book. We do this each year. This includes line items, so line item by line item details on all municipal departments, salaries, and expenses. So it's very detailed. And the overall budget book, which includes the complete operating and capital budgets, as well as a number of details on the overall town finances in general. And as always, these will be posted on the town's website. So the budget presented and passed at town meeting must be balanced. It's required, ensuring that the town does not spend more than it receives. So a balanced budget, in short, just means the proposed expenditures do not exceed anticipated revenues, such as taxes, state aid, local receipts, for the upcoming fiscal year. So there's no option to deficit spend or leave gaps to resolve later. And when we say the town balances the budget, that includes everything: municipal departments, school, fiscal costs, debt. The town is responsible for balancing the entire budget as a financial plan. A large portion of that is non-discretionary. So retirement, health insurance, debt services, these are things that we have to fund and pay no matter what. These costs apply to both town and school employees. And when those costs increase, they don't come with a new revenue source attached. So they have to be absorbed within Proposition 2.5. And like I said, so the good news is that the FY27 proposed budget before you tonight is balanced. We'll start with a high level look at where the money comes from, where the money goes, and then before getting into operating details. This balance reflects trade-offs already made. Cost growth in one area requires adjustments in another. That's just how it works. And after the overview, I'll walk through the operating budget so you can see how those decisions played out department by department. So a background on how we've gotten here so far. We entered the FY27 budget cycle with several significant cost pressures, which is pretty typical at this time. Last year and this year has been a little bit more pressures involved that were largely outside of local control. So those included for this year a higher retirement assessment affecting both town and school employees, health insurance projections at roughly 12%, and continued escalation in special education tuition and transportation. So in December, we built an initial budget using department requests at the starting point, which we do every year. And at that point, municipal budget was increasing at a 5.2%, the schools increasing at a 4.8%, and fixed costs roughly at a 7%. Taken together, those assumptions produced a structural gap, or a budget gap as we call it, of about $1.6 million between projected expenses and available revenues. That gap made it clear early on that the initial draft of the budget was not sustainable. So at the January 5th Select Board meeting, we presented an updated preview reflecting reductions that had already been made. And at that point, total expenses, $136.2 million against projected revenues of $135.4 million, left a $820,000 gap. So municipal growth had been reduced to a 4.1, school growth to 4.3, and fixed costs were at a 4.1. The update tonight is that the FY27 budget is now balanced. Total FY27 expenditures and revenues are both at $135.6 million, and the proposed municipal budget increase is 4%. Schools is 4.3%, and the fixed costs are now growing at 2.8%. So reaching balance required adjustments across multiple areas rather than relying on just one single solution. And some more details on specifically how we get here. This slide shows how we closed the original $1.6 million gap with a combination of expense reductions, updated fixed cost assumptions, and conservative revenue adjustments. So we reduced municipal expense budgets from the initial department requests and level funded all non-discretionary expense lines. So that's a total reduction of about $290,000. And just to make that more clear, when departments submit all their requests, they say what they need, right? So and that could be increasing increases in things like training budgets or expense lines that they need increased or positions they would like to see increased. And we have to go in and sort of go through that and weed it out and reduce that back down to basically what comes to a level funded budget. We also eliminated part-time support in town hall and the library for a total reduction of $59,000. And we also reduced outside professional services on the town side by $3,000. To help manage debt service growth, we're partially funding the debt service increase for the cemetery expansion project with cemetery lot sale revenues, which was presented at town meeting when that project was approved. We also updated fixed cost assumptions with more accurate information as it became available. The pension assessment, which I know I stated at a previous meeting, but just as a reminder, was updated by $332,000 reduction based on revised funding schedule. It's important to note that part of that cost last year was funded in free cash and will not be in FY27. So that's a good thing. So it reflects a structural adjustment there. Health insurance was updated by $321,000 using the most recent information from the GIC, which reduced the earlier projected increase. So on the revenue side, we increased local receipt projection by $50,000. This increase is tied to a new revenue from a CSA agreement with the Brigham Women's property, and also revenue from the electric vehicle charges specifically at the police station. So it's not based on any one-time assumptions. Those are revenue sources that will be coming in year after year. State aid was also updated based on the governor's budget. The good thing about the timing of this meeting is that the governor released her budget on Friday, so we're able to include that in the update. That resulted in a net $227,000 increase over FY26. So taken together, these steps allowed us to close that gap and present a balanced budget tonight, which is in compliance with Prop 2.5 and structurally sound going into town meeting. Should I pause there and take questions, Rob, or you want me to keep rolling along?
I think let's stop for a second.
It's a lot of information, I know.
It's a lot of information. I want to give you a chance to breathe for a moment as well. Just and ask a couple of questions. But before I ask anything, I want to give my colleagues an opportunity to ask any questions related to what Stephanie has presented thus far.
I don't, having spoken with Stephanie about this, I don't at this point.
Steph, I'm curious, we were getting guidance on the health insurance number of upwards of 12, 13, 14%. We were, you're hearing all kinds of, increases, some in the 20% range. What was it that was able to be sort of a saving grace this time around with respect to health insurance?
So we got an update, I think it was about a week ago from the GIC. They met, and during that meeting, they discussed a number of revisions they're going through as part of their funding schedule for the health insurance program. So just off the top of my head, they're increasing copays. They're increasing, sorry.
They're increasing, they're increasing deductibles, they tier a lot of different either PCPs or specialists or emergency rooms, sort of tinkering with those tiers. And then the big change is that they are not quite eliminating, but really minimizing access to GLP-1s.
Got it. Okay. And then with respect to the pension number, right? That's not a reduction in how much we need to contribute. It's just a different payment schedule that would reduce what we were projecting we would have to contribute this year, right?
Yeah, so Norfolk County puts out an assessment to all communities in the group each year. And because they voted, thankfully, to restructure their funding plan this year and push out that fully funded date for the liability by 2 years, it gave sort of a little bit of a break for 1 year because it extended it out. And so now it's sort of smoothed out. It goes back up next year. Like I've looked at the next 2 years of what will be assessed. So it goes back up next year, but it doesn't look like as far for the next 2 years that it's going up to that, 10, 12% increase we had been seeing. Because when you extend things out by the funded date, it makes a huge difference. It really smooths out what the assessments are year over year. So this is a one-time reduction based on what we had been projecting, but it came at a good time. So
Yeah, because I mean, if I recall, our last projected increase on fixed cost, of which, the health insurance and the pension are a major contributor to, you were at like 7%, and
yes,
we're down less than half of that. So that's, I mean, very, very fortunate in the way of timing.
absolutely. And I will say, and I'll get into this later on a slide, but the GIC has not voted this plan yet, and they have not voted their final rates. So this is just sort of, we're basing off of the most up-to-date information, hoping, crossing our fingers that that reduction, it does come to
Have
be
we
real.
have we ever seen a situation where they issued guidance, then they issued new guidance that was lower, that hadn't yet been voted, where it then went up?
I haven't seen, usually they come out with their range and they stick to it until they vote their plans in there. This is a unique year. I think, Molly, I don't want to misspeak on that, but it seems unique that they came out with more information in advance already before they even vote.
I think the point of your question, Rob, if I'm reading that correctly, is has there ever been a situation where they've lowered it and then it's been higher? Typically, it falls right within the range. What's differing community to community or group to group is each of the, I want 5 or 6 different plans that are within the GIC. Some could be an increase of 4, some could be an increase of 8. So it just depends on what our population has.
Chooses.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
but typically it is well within that range. And for them to come out with updated, you have to tie this to all of this. The state is in GIC, and so as they're developing their budget, they were clearly pushing for an updated number as well.
Okay, good. So not a lot of risk on this balanced budget that you're presenting.
Yes.
Great. Okay, carry on.
All right. So just moving on to the details of the budgets. The municipal side provides a diverse range, you see this every year, of services throughout the town. The bulk of the budget is made up of police, fire, DPW. Shout out to DPW again, great job over the last 36 hours. So the core services of public safety and maintenance. There's also departments that provide programs and services for all ages. That's the senior center, the COA, library, recreation. There are then state required services such as zoning, health, licensing, veterans, and then the administrative departments, billing, collecting, town administrative services. The total municipal budget for this year is just over 27 million. This is salary driven budget, as I say. The portion shown here in blue is 84% of the budget for staffing. I believe last year that might have been 82 or 83, so it's going up. As we really try to control any expenses we can. Police, fire, and DPW workers provide the direct services to the residents.
Steph, this was one that as I saw this and I was thinking back to prior years, this has continued to creep up as a percentage, right? It used to be, the school side was typically in this 84, 85% range, and we were down in the 79, 80, 81% range. This continued growth as a percentage of the pie shows you that the only real sort of controllable that we have are the expense lines. Are we getting to a point where we're denying requests for things that, really become material to the effectiveness of the departments?
Yes.
Okay.
That was blunt, but yeah, no,
That's why I'm asking. I mean, it's I'm watching the math and the slice of the pie get smaller and smaller, and at some point, there's not much left to cut there.
right. One slice of that pie, the blue, is contractually obligated, so it's just something that increases year to year.
Right.
Whereas expenses is the one thing we can control, so it's been level funded at least for the last 2 or 3 years.
Right. Thank you.
So this is just looking specifically at numbers. It's just a different way of looking at it, a breakdown of the proposed funding and how that is allocated amongst the different service areas. Just to note, Public Works and Public Safety have an increase of about 688,000, which is 65% of that total increase. So they make up the majority of year-over-year increases as usual. The overall increase in the current year is just over $1 million, and this is sort of just going more to what you just said, Rob. The majority of that increase, 95%, is driven by salaries, more specifically the contractual obligations for staff. And that's just COLA and steps increases is what that means. This slide is on unfunded requests from departments, which is included intentionally just for transparency. Not all new requests can be included each year, and specifically in the FY27 operating budget due to overall capacity limits. So if every request here were funded, it would have increased the municipal budget by approximately $751,000 or an additional 2.9%, which is obviously not sustainable. So these are not new ideas. Most of them are second or third year requests for the board that's already been seen. Several of these items listed were partially funded, either time limited or deferred rather than eliminated altogether. None of these requests were removed lightly, and each one was reviewed in the context of the total affordability. We are partially funding, I will just call out so it's not confusing here, the overtime budget for police and fire. This is something that we wanted to significantly increase this year if we could. It just didn't really happen, so we're partially funding the request. This is just the amount over here that was not funded. Also, as you can see, dispatcher and the police department's second year request. The full salary for the Youth and Family Service Council, we've been talking about this for a number of years. It is funded with ARPA through December, so through the end of the calendar year. And we were able to work in partial funding of that for FY27, but nowhere near the full amount. So we're hoping over the years to maybe gradually increase that amount, because that's an important position that exists. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay. Public safety makes up the largest portion of the unfunded total. Oh, sorry.
Actually, well, just on this one.
Yeah, I was just
So-
going to say, just to highlight, most of it's public safety. And then the other part is what we call our human services division. So that's library, youth, family services, recreation, council on aging.
Yeah, and while all of these are position related, it goes to your prior statement of, there's a lot of expense related things that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
not able to accommodate, and there's some personnel requests that continue to come in that we're not able to accommodate as well.
Yes.
For multiple years in many cases.
Yep. And we'll just, these will remain part of the future budget discussions as revenue allows. This chart just shows the growth of the municipal budget over a multi-period year. We've worked to maintain sustainable and moderate growth. This is just really showing that this year is within the sustainable model with a 4% proposed increase. So now just kind of backing out higher picture, the municipal budget is part of the overall budget, which includes operating, capital, and all other appropriations made through town meeting. The FY27 proposed budget is a comprehensive plan that balances operating, capital, investment, long-term financial obligations. It maintains service levels while still staying within that Prop 2.5 limit and the town's financial policies. And I know I've gone through these numbers already. I won't read them all out, but that's all the increases for the different categories, how much we're funding on the capital side. So the base programs funded with free cash, consistent with prior practice. Town side is 1.7 million, schools are 1.28, supports ongoing facility, equipment, and infrastructure needs without adding any new debt. In addition, we're proposing, as we do most years, a supplemental capital program funded through a mix of free cash, meals and hotel tax revenue, and other dedicated sources. The budget also includes a $125,000 transfer to the stabilization fund, which is keeping us on target with our financial policies. We're also contributing just over 1.6 million to the OPEB trust fund, maintaining progress towards our long-term retiree health obligations. These are deliberate choices we make each year to reduce future risk rather than defer it. So there are currently no additional capital articles that require new borrowing on. That keeps our debt service stable and preserves future borrowing capacity, which is very limited right now. The budget also includes a contribution to the Special Education Reserve Fund for the schools, funded with free cash. That number has not yet been finalized. Oops, sorry about that. Forgot I had an animation there. I'll keep it for one more minute so you can read that if you need to.
I was wondering, you were saying
I
things
know.
that were like, wow, that's not even there.
That's my fault. So in total, the overall FY27 proposed budget is balanced between projected revenues and expenses, supports core services, investment in capital, and maintains the town's long-term financial health. The overall budget is at 135.6 million. This chart just shows basically where every dollar is spent. So about 65% of the budget is school and municipal, people, services, day-to-day operations. Fixed costs and benefits account for 18%, and then debt service is about 6%. Only a small portion of the budget is discretionary once fixed costs are accounted for. And the total operating expenditures are increasing by about 4.6 million or 3.8%.
Steph, I just want to make sure that people are clear on things. Right here, you're showing fixed cost benefits at 18%, but fixed costs, shared costs like that are part of the overall operating budget. And as a percent of the operating budget, I believe it's a fair bit higher on a percentage basis, right?
It's about 22 million. I don't have that number in front of me. Of the 127 million, it's about 22 million. I can't do that math quickly off the top of my head.
Okay.
But yeah, this is 18% of the overall budget, if that makes sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the revenue side, that budget obviously is the same since it's balanced 135.6 million. There are 8 major categories. About 80% of our funding comes from property taxes, which is normal or typical for a town like Westwood. State aid, sewer revenues, local receipts, and available funds make up the remainder. This continues to be a tax-supported budget with limited flexibility, and total projected revenues, obviously both equaling the same, make it a balanced budget. And just diving a little bit deeper into each of those categories quickly, the high-level ones for revenue, to give more information. State aid represents about 6% of the total revenues. That means it absolutely matters, but it doesn't drive the budget or solve any structural budget pressures, unfortunately. The governor released the FY27 proposed budget on Friday, January 23rd, and the numbers on this slide reflect that update. So prior to the release, state aid had been assumed to be level funded. All state aid updates have now been incorporated in helping to close that gap. So total state aid receipts are projected to be increasing by about $239,000 or 2.7%. Chapter 70, which is the education aid, accounts for a big chunk of that increase, about $213,000. Municipal unrestricted aid, or what they call UGA, and other small programs show modest increases as well. State charges, though, on the expense side are also increasing, which do offset a part of that gain, but the net impact of the revenue is about $227,000 or 2.8%. So this might sound low, but Molly and I have been discussing, we were hoping for about 2 or 3%. So this is not bad on that side. It's better than the possibility of the state having to level funded. So there was an increase. I won't go through these. I did at your last meeting, but just for reference and to have as part of this overall presentation is just the balances in each account and what helps fund other sources such as the capital budget. Oh, actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to state aid for just one more minute. I want to just note these numbers are preliminary. I know I say this every time, but the next update won't come from the House Ways and Means Committee in the Senate until late April. And then that's followed by the Senate in May, and then what's called the Conference Committee, which is one of the final steps in June. So the final state budget is typically signed in early July. I think it was like July 2nd or 3rd last year when the governor signed it. And just why that timeline matters, any increase above these estimates, it's late to include it in the budget. So what it does is it reduces the tax levy eventually when we go to do the recap in November. Any decrease, say we estimated higher and it came in lower than we anticipated, would need to be absorbed within the existing budget, which would mean cutting somewhere else. So that's why we just remain conservative in our assumptions.
When was the last time that type of a reduction from this point happened?
I don't think I've ever seen, sometimes what they'll do is they'll go down on, they'll go like up on chapter 70 and back down on the municipal side. I haven't seen, once the governor comes out with her budget, it doesn't often decrease, but I don't want to say that that has never happened. Often we see an increase either from the Senate or the House, which is a good thing, but like that's why I put the timeline up here. We don't usually see that until late April, early May.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Some details on the stabilization fund allocation, that $125,000. The balance in the account for FY27 with this allocation, if it goes forward at town meeting, would be $4.35 million, with the target per the financial policies right now being about $4.5 million. So we're on track with that funding schedule. For the allocation on the OPEB or other post-employment benefits trust fund, that amount for FY27 will be just over 1.6 million, keeping on track with that funding plan as well. This account has a full actuarial valuation done every other year. Those reports are posted on the town's website with much more detail on this account if anyone's interested in that. And the trust fund approximately has $28 million in it right now. So operating budget, now moving, and I know this is confusing, we jump from the municipal to the overall to the operating, but just to show how those all fit together, the operating budget includes the school and municipal and fixed costs and debt service and sewer. And then operating budget is then part of the overall that we see at town meeting with all the budget articles. And this is what we refer to at town meeting as Appendix D or Article 3. So the operating budgets fund the core services residents expect every day, public safety, schools, libraries, human services. Our goal is always to maintain those services while keeping the budget stable and predictable year over year. Stability obviously matters. Sharp swings can create staffing disruptions or long-term cost problems. So this just shows that each 1% increase in the combined school and municipal operating budgets equals roughly $850,000. About $261,000 of that on the municipal side, and then the remaining $587,000 on the school side. So this is why, just to show even small percentage changes have a real impact on affordability. This slide just shows how the FY27 operating budget fits into the longer term trend. That budget is $124.9 million, representing a 3.8% increase. So this chart breaks out the operating budget into four main components, just excluding sewer that has its own funding source. School operating costs total about $61.5 million, municipal at $27.2 million. Fixed costs, which include all the benefits and insurance, are at about $24.6 million. Sorry, it said 22 earlier, Rob. It's $24.6 million. And debt service is at about $7.5 million. So together, these categories account for essentially the entire operating budget. This is the same information, just adding sewer and then showing a bit more detail on the FY26 versus 27 budgets and then the overall changes in each of those categories. And just to note, we're still waiting on final information as we were discussing for health insurance. Also, we're waiting on the Blue Hills school assessment. We don't usually get that till I think probably February, and the MWRA assessment. So the budget will reflect all those updates once received. Looking specifically at fixed costs, I had this slide, if you were at your last meeting, it didn't have as much information, and obviously there's been more that has come in since then, so I just wanted to give a quick update. Fixed costs are the expenses the town does not control year to year, but we still have to fund in full. So for this fiscal year, total fixed costs are projected to increase by approximately 2.8% or $678,000. That is materially lower than last year, but it still consumes a large portion of available growth. As I talked about at your last meeting, the pension assessment is projected to decrease by about 4.6%, roughly that $332,000. So that's good. It's reflected in the preliminary assessment from Norfolk County. And like we said, this is a one-time decrease. Future years are expected to resume increasing. Health insurance, is projected to increase by approximately 8.5%, or about $781,000. This estimate is based on updated information, as I said, from the GIC. Final rates and plans are going to be voted mid-February and then end of February. So I think February 26th is their meeting where they'll vote their final rates. So we'll know at that point, we'll do an analysis of exactly who's on the plans right now, what plans they're in, and the amounts. And we'll have a much updated information at the end of February. And for context, recent annual increases are listed there, and they've ranged from 5 to 10%, as you can see, getting closer to the 8, 9, 10% in the last couple of years. So this projection is consistent with that trend. Other fixed cost drivers, trash. We talk about this each year. Disposal costs are projected to increase total overall trash by 5.7%. Town hardware and software costs are increasing by $274,000. That is due specifically to the implementation of a new financial system that was approved at the last town meeting and the ongoing licensing that comes with that. So we were anticipating that increase. Comprehensive liability insurance increased by $84,000 due to the addition of the new Pine Hill School. Last year, if you remember, the Maya, the insurance company, updated and included a significant increase to property general liability based on the valuation of the building. So for FY26, we had negotiated and a deductible was increased to partially offset those costs that we weren't anticipating. So we now just need to build the full impact of that into the FY27 budget for that building. Other fixed costs are generally level funded. Payroll tax costs specifically were decreased by approximately $250,000. We're always looking at fixed costs to see where we are trending on actuals, to see where we can adjust or reevaluate what we have for budgets. So we reduce that based on actuals on the school side. So all of these offsets help moderate the overall increase. And just for comparison, the FY26 fixed costs increased by almost 8%, or $1.74 million. So we're in much better shape than we were last year, just due to some one-time things that came about altogether. So FY26 represents just the fixed costs still need to take priority over any kind of discretionary spending.
And just to be clear, while those things are labeled as fixed costs, they're really, I mean, they're shared costs.
Shared costs, yep.
All of the departments, you know, school, municipal, right? We got to pay pension for all the public employees, health insurance for all the public employees. That software system that you're talking about will be used by both the school and the municipal side. So, you know, this is, the OPEB is, again, pension assessment for future, right? So
Yes.
This is all shared cost.
Yes, correct. It is actually labeled shared fixed costs. I usually shorten it to fixed costs.
Yep.
Just upcoming February meetings, just continue to update any changes on any of these budget items, review the ongoing capital, and then any other larger projects that might be considered. Those assessments I mentioned, I'll update you as soon as those come in. And then the budget documents will be released right at the beginning of February and will all be posted on the town's website. February 3rd is the next select board meeting. And then I will be presenting to the FinCom on February 11th, the entire FY27 budget as it stands right now. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I apologize for the dense material. I know it was a lot in one.
This is the time of year when we have a lot to go through from you. So I appreciate all of the diligence you and your team have put into this. And I want to turn to my colleagues for questions. However, I know one of the first questions we will likely get is from my colleague, Mr. Privatera, because he's going to look at some of the things that were not funded in that one page and is going to ask about one of them. But so before we go to that, Joe, I want to let you know that I asked Molly and Stephanie, because at different times we've talked about ambulance receipts. I asked them to go back and do a 10-year review of ambulance receipts to look at what we had as starting balances, what we received in receipts, and what we spent that money on, which is typically in the form of new equipment. And so I'm going to let them take us through what they came up with and what opportunities that might present.
Want me to roll right into that, Rob?
If you would, Steph, yes.
Okay. So as the chair just said, I know they've discussed this at the last at least 2 years, that the priority of the board overall is to add 4 firefighters. The town added 2 firefighters using operating budget costs in the FY25 budget, and that was approved at town meeting. And then this time around, direction was given for the FY27 budget to add 2 firefighters, looking at the possibility of using ambulance receipts as a funding source. So for tonight, we do have a presentation, swear this one's only about 4 slides, on the analysis of what that would look like, and then just looking to the board for direction on next steps. So just a reminder, the fire department staffing, Molly, I just saw you come off mute. Would you like to take this?
No,
rather than me?
no, you were rolling right through it, but I know you've been talking for a minute, so I'll give you a chance to catch your breath. So how the department is currently staffed is that there's 4 shifts. 2 of them have 10 members on each shift. The other 2 have 11. Those were the 2 that were added in FY25. And we staff to a minimum of 9 on each shift. So if there's a shift with 10 and someone calls out sick, we don't backfill that position. If 2 people call out sick, we backfill 1 position. So we're maintaining a minimum of 9 at all times. This proposed staffing model would change it to 11 across all 4 shifts, but maintaining that minimum staffing still at 9 firefighters. So
You want me
this,
to take this?
I can take this part and then I'll give it back to you. So this is just the full cost of what it takes to employ a fighter, and that includes base pay, their different other pays, holiday, what their benefits would be, which we typically assess at about 35% of the total salary. And then on the capital side, what their protective gear costs, what their clothing costs. So all in, a typical firefighter costs about $164,000. If we're removing the overtime costs from this analysis, which we are doing, because the theory of this being if you add more bodies, you're less reliant on overtime. That comes to about $278,000 for 2 firefighters. So this would become part of the FY27 base and grow in future years as salaries increase.
Now, importantly, this board has said we support the idea of this so long as there are recurring sustainable revenues to support it.
Correct. And that's the next slide. So this is the analysis that Rob sort of teed up. We looked back at the last 10 years of CAFA reports of what was the starting balance, how much did we actually collect in ambulance receipts, how much was transferred out, and being transferred out would be for a variety of things. It would be for an ambulance, for ambulance equipment. Whenever we have an Article 2 transfer for overage and fire overtime, we often use the ambulance receipts for that. So there's a variety of different things that could be transferred out, but those are the main categories. And so then what would the ending balance be? And we looked at that over the last 10 years. And then in order to do a projection over the next 10 years, had to make a couple assumptions. And so in this case, I took a very conservative approach to what the increase in receipts would be. As you can see on the chart on the far right of the slide, is the growth in collected ambulance receipts year over year is really variable, right? Stephanie and I have talked a lot about this. It's not, a static growth as we might see in other areas. It's up some years when there's a lot of need, and it's down some years. You'll see the last 2 years, there has been an increase. That is due to 2 different things. One, we changed our ambulance receipt service, which has had a better collection rate. And then the board, I think it was at your February or March meeting last year, raised ambulance rates for the first time in a while. And so that saw an increase. For the purposes of this exercise, I went for a very conservative 0% increase. It would likely be more, but that's how I wanted to go about this. For transfers out, my assumptions were first adding that 278,000, which funds the 2 firefighters. Also looking at the multi-year capital vehicle replacement schedule that the chief and I have. So in these transfers out, not only does it include the standard ambulance equipment, the standard Article 2 transfer for any overage and overtime. It also includes an ambulance, I think, in FY 27, an engine in FY 28, an ambulance in 31, and another large apparatus in 2023. I don't have exactly what my projections were. The point of it being, we wanted to make sure, can this account continue to absorb what we have been using it for in addition to that 278,000. I do also want to say in this projection, that 278 is added in FY 27 and does not increase. We know the cost of 2 firefighters does increase over time. This projection doesn't account for that. It would just be, we're adding 278 and the rest would be absorbed within the operating budget. And as you can see from my forward projection, the ending balance still hangs out at around $1 million at the end of FY 33, adding the 2 firefighters and assuming the additional increases of apparatus that we would be purchasing from this account.
Go up. Oops, sorry. Sorry. By to the 135.9 million with those 2 firefighters added, because on the revenue side, it would not change the proposed taxes or the levy, the 107 that we've had. That wouldn't change. What would change, and I know this is a terrible name for it, but we lump in a number of things in here. It's called available funds. So this $1 million number is what would capture the new revenue source, and that would be the additional $278,000 in ambulance receipts, which would bring the total revenue budget to just under 136 million.
Thank you. Thank you for the thorough analysis. I mean, to me, being able to look at the objective facts of where do we start and how much capacity do we have, and are we putting ourselves at risk to be able to continue to purchase the type of equipment that is necessary to provide the service, which is what we've typically done with ambulance receipts, is buy ambulances and engines because they're all ALS equipment, if I'm not mistaken. Is it? So
Yes.
this would be consistent with our desire to be able to support adding these 2 firefighters, but doing so in a way that is sustainable. All right, I will thank you, Stephanie. I will turn to my colleagues to say, do you have any questions about anything that Stephanie has presented in the general operating budget or with respect to the ambulance receipts and the additional firefighters we just talked about?
I don't have questions. I do have a few comments I'd like to make. First of all, Molly and Stephanie and the entire finance team, thank you for this great work. You're able to go through it in a few minutes, and no apologies are needed. Stephanie, the density of the presentation is very much appreciated, and thank you to your team, and especially appreciate the work in helping us to reach what I hope we will agree, this very important goal of trying to staff the fire department. And just to remind folks, this goes back several years to the operational study that this board commissioned, and wanting to get to the staffing of 11 fully. And we had wanted to do this sooner, but we had to do it in a sustainable way. As you mentioned, Steph, there was a change with respect to the ambulance receipts, both in the collection and the rates, which we found a number of months ago were not at a competitive level. We brought them up to a competitive rate, and we agreed as a board that we would look at that annually to make sure that we are staying competitive. So we are now bringing in even more in those receipts, which are very much to be considered local receipts, much like the excise taxes that come in, the licensing, etc. So I appreciate very much the analysis. I believe this is sustainable, and we have already identified that this is an urgent need for the town in terms of our public safety service. So I am in favor of moving forward in this vein. Thank you.
Joe.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, Rob. Couple of thoughts. Marianne, you mentioned the studies. It goes back to 2013 with
Well,
the
right.
ESCI study going way back. And I know you're always very supportive of this when you're on the Finance Committee. I know you were concerned about it as well. I want to personally thank Stephanie and Molly. We had a very sincere discussion about proceeding forward with this and the different funding mechanisms. And I thought it was a very fruitful and helpful discussion. And Molly, I very much appreciate the work that you did on this, on grinding out the numbers. And Marianne, you're right about the kudos to Chief Lunn for recognizing that the collection agency had to be changed. And kudos to Rob, Marianne, for supporting the increased ambulance fees, which I had advocated for, which, by the way, Rob, I noticed that Norwood and Dover have already increased theirs. So at some point we have to
Took
get
the
that.
sale out of me. It's going to be on your
Yeah.
February 3rd agenda. I had to
Yeah,
do
we're-
some other things first.
We have much to discuss with respect to those receipts as well, the those rates.
But we do need to visit that. I think that the residents in Westwood deserve this enhanced service, and I think the firefighters do an outstanding job, and Chief Lund and his assistant Colin McCarthy also do an outstanding job. So I'm pleased to have your support on this. I've advocated for this for a while, and thank you so much, and thank you, Molly, and thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, and Joe, we're happy to join you in that support because as we've maintained all along, we wanted to get there. We just wanted to get there in a fiscally responsible way. And I think that, Molly and Stephanie have done a fantastic job of helping us identify a very clear path forward. Are there questions that either of you have with respect to the broader operating budget? Comments, questions?
No, again, thank you for all the work. There are clearly items, and there will be every year, that we're unable to fund that we would like to, because we have to do it sustainably. We'll see what shakes out before the end of the year. We'll keep an eye on a few of the things that may be moving, but I think this budget balances the needs well.
Okay. The only other thing I'd like to add is that, Steph, this was a year where we faced some really strong headwinds and budget challenges. And we were very fortunate in the sort of change in timing with respect to the pension assessment from Norfolk County and the savings that we were able to realize in this budget cycle. We also were beneficiaries of the insurance from the GIC coming in significantly lower than the guidance they had provided us, which also provided a significant savings from where we were when we had over $1 million budget gap. We were looking hard at real cuts to service, and so the fact that some of these numbers have come in favorably for us is a good thing this year, but it highlights again the challenge that fixed costs or costs that are beyond the control of the town officials, right, yourselves in particular, places on our budget with the constraints of Prop 2.5. 20% is what fixed shared costs account for as a percentage of that overall operating budget. And so if those numbers had been going up significantly faster than what the operating budgets were requesting, then there's only one place to take from, and that's people. Because as you showed, 84% of those budgets are people. And that is the same, I'm almost positive it's the identical number that they have on the school side is 84%. So, it is a people-intensive service delivery model, and it is really, really challenged by fixed costs, especially when they are accelerating at the rates that they are on both the municipal and the school side. So, Stephanie, Molly, thank you very much. Outstanding work. Anything further before we move to our next agenda item?
No, just thank you all for the support.
Okay. Next up, we're going to be joined by Ford Spalding, who's chair of the FS1 Steering Committee, to give us an update. Welcome, Ford.
Thank you. Listening to that last discussion, I sat on the 50-yard line last evening around 7:30, 8 o'clock when the fire department pulled into Fox Hill. And the ambulance and the fire department and the snow was flying and the wind was flying and all that. And I so appreciate the work that they do, because that was a challenging way to bring a patient out and in, and it took time, as well as the staff here was paving the way with plows and all kinds of things. But I get a firsthand view of it from the 50-yard line. That was after the Patriots game, Mr. Gotti. So they do a great job.
Yeah,
Today
they were busy last night, because I know I saw them in my neighborhood as well.
I know they were busy, and we met with the chief today, assistant chief, and I would have nothing but compliments for them. I think Molly would agree they were tired.
I'm going to tell the chief that you think he looked tired.
No, you don't dare. But he's probably watching this and clapping right now. So, today we confirmed in our meeting, we're really down to 3 potential sites, and I think one is more of our favorite, and I can go into that for a minute. But the 3 sites that we're really looking at is the town-owned land behind Starbucks. The second one be the land where the Deerfield School is. And the third is really fallback. We continue being at 637 High Street. A lot of it depends on where we're going to end up. Depends on how we get access to High Street. The first 2 I mentioned need access to High Street, because they are not on the main street like 637. But their advantage too, when I think of those 2 sites, is that they are flat piece of land. I know the acreage up at behind Starbucks is about 5.1 acres. And I'm assuming it's buildable. I think we need to do some work on that site, at least to find out if it is buildable. And I know we've talked to Molly, and that is going to be in the works, hopefully, because you don't want to go out and buy something or do anything else until you know it's suitable land. But when you get to flat land, we can then look at a different design. And that different design can be favorable from a cost point of view, while at the same time providing the programmatic needs that the department needs. So, and that's what I'm talking about is a single story or partially single story building, which can work. And I remember our discussions of 4, 5, 6 months ago that were going on, and the concern of the costs, and anything we can do to try to lower the cost of the building is good. It would be advantageous if that's even possible, given the high increases in public building projects. So we're starting that process, looking at the possibility, and we hope within the next, maybe 2-3 weeks that we're going to be able to have a potential solution, which would help. But that's where we are in terms of the site. We can't say where it's going to be until we know that we have access to High Street and what that means. And Deerfield is another one that has the same issue. But I think the access is more challenging there, given that you have the library, the police station, you have the town hall, and then the rest are all residences. So that's a little more of a challenge. So that's where we are to the Board of Selectmen in terms of what we're narrowing it down to. As we look again to the property behind Starbucks, a letter went out late last week, I believe, to 23 residents who are abutters, all of which have received a letter indicating that we are talking about this. It's not a done deal by a long shot. Nobody's approved it, all that. But they have my contact information if they would like to meet with us. I have 2 appointments already. Another member of our committee is working on another. We're gonna get phone numbers, so if I don't hear from people, we're gonna be calling them. So the neighbors know that we're at least looking at it. Obviously, if they're watching our meeting, this meeting tonight or others, they'll know. But it's far from a done deal, but if we're talking about property near their residence, we need to talk about it.
So Ford, thank you for your update. I'm going to ask a few questions, but I'm going to give my colleagues an opportunity to ask questions first. So,
But I'm not finished with my update.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
No, I'm getting there.
You sounded like you were going the Walter Cronkite route, and that's the way it is. So I thought
That's the way it is. The second thing is we've taken a hard look. First of all, a lot of our members of the committee haven't been in a fire station or familiar with it, and so we wanted to educate ourselves, and we've done that, as I think you know. But we spent time today with the chief and the assistant chief, once again going over the operational programmatic needs of the department. And I think that's important for us not only to know, but it is also for the residents, because when you finally go to an architect, they're going to recommend a building based on those needs. And those needs are really, they're not negotiable because of what they're involved with. They're involved with living, they're involved with housing equipment, they're involved with training and a lot of other things that we went through today. And we spent a good almost an hour going through it. So I would invite anybody to take a look at our meeting today. But you've got to meet these needs for our fire EMT personnel, and in our community, they're all the same. Finally, then I will be quiet. On this Thursday, January 29 at 7 p.m., we're going to have a hybrid meeting in the library and also remote. And we're calling it a community conversation with the steering committee as to where we are now. And we want to try to do this on a monthly basis. And so I hope the community would tune in. I hope they'll join us. I think we will learn a lot of what their thinking is, and they'll learn a lot of what we're talking about. So that's a very important meeting that I hope we have attendance at. Rob, I'm done.
All right. Thank you for it. Appreciate that. So again, I have a few questions. I do want to say, I want to really thank you and the other 8 members who were appointed in late November to this committee. And you have now had how many meetings, Ford?
Well, we've had 7 committee meetings. Some of them are like we went to Needham and all that, but basically 7 meetings. And if you want to get through February, we have 2 more planned. A recommendation was made today. Maybe we should have more meetings. Well, we will if we have something to talk about. But
okay. So I have a few follow-up questions, but I want to give my colleagues the opportunity first.
Joe?
Sure. Thanks, Marianne. Ford, nice work on the group. I've attended 1 meeting and watched some others. I'm looking forward to seeing today's meeting. It sounds like hopefully the letter that went out will be helpful. can we do anything as far as I've always found, if you're going to meet with people, as far as having any kind of handouts, conceptual drawings, or fact sheets, FAQs, or anything like that, when you go to see these people, I think that might be helpful. I hope the addition of the 2 firefighters and the ambulance in Islington will be helpful to your group to help you get some things off your board there to help better understand things. The programmatic needs, I think that's been discussed a few times. Are you folks all set now on exactly what the programmatic needs are for the fire department, or is there still more work to be done on that? Because I know you've spent some time on it.
I would have to ask each committee member individually, but I think the answer would be yes, we're all set. It's very clear, Joe, you are familiar with fire departments, I know, and programmatic needs really don't differ from one station to another depending on the size, of course, but it also is a function of the property that it's on and what you can do. So no, I think we're very settled, and I think the important part now, Joe, is to get out to the community what those programmatic needs are, and with that in mind, our intention is to put up on our website, on the town website, a document that shows what those needs are and hopefully and why.
Okay, so you've got the programmatic needs down, and Molly, you're going to get that up onto the website, is that correct? Okay, and forward back to my first question is, having gone door to door myself, and I always made sure I had handouts, is there anything we can do to help you with the process?
I think it will be. Obviously, that's going to be more when there's a town meeting issue, I think, and decisions that need to be made. But we really have to be very visible out there. You're about to have a town administrator from Easton that has done that in Easton, and I'm sure you've seen the work that he's done in terms of communicating with his residents, and I think he, along with Molly, are going to be a huge help to us in that regard.
Okay. I'm good, Marianne. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Ford, thank you so much, and thank you to all of the members of the committee who are working hard. You are doing exactly what the vision was in terms of really reaching out to the community. I love the community conversation that you'll be holding, reaching out to the residents. This is really great work, so thank you. I also did not get a chance to watch your meeting today yet. But in terms of the programmatic needs, when you talk about documenting that, Ford, do you expect to be documenting what that translates into in terms of the needs in the building? What it is that we need to meet those needs?
We're not architects, so we're not doing the design work. What we're doing is saying these are the needs that are there. When you had your listening session, I was struck at the listening session. How long ago was that? 3 months ago. And a lot of people were concerned that we needed to cut back. You're building to build big a building. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, so we cut down the square feet of something. But you're going to be it's not the square feet of the building that's concerning. You're cutting back on the programmatic needs of the department. And, yes, we're going to take a hard look when you talk about rooms or bathrooms and all that. You can take a look at that when you come to that stage. And I think there are things that you can do. And the chief has talked to us about things that we might be able to do. But it's again, you cannot cut. The vehicles that you buy get bigger and bigger every year. You need to have space for those vehicles. You need to have roughly 4 or 5 feet around those vehicles because the men and women of the department take care of them, and you need working space. You need to have training space in that building because it's sort of like a football team. You have to train and work because they're going to walk into different circumstances all the time in our community and outside of our community, and they have to know what to do. So training facilities, facilities, you need to take into account, I'm rambling on now a little bit more, but you need to take into account what happens when they run into a difficult situation that affects them mentally. They're going to need some downtime, some time to themselves. So these are all things that you need to think about, plus a lot more. Storage is another one. But.
Thank you, Ford.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
Sure thing. So Ford, I know we convened this group not that long ago, and you have already held a number of meetings and have made some great progress. I know we also gave you a very aggressive deadline of, early March to be able to make a recommendation. Not that you have made a recommendation, but it sounds like you're leaning in a direction. How does that impact, if you recall, part of the rationale for looking to have that recommendation in early March was to be able to include a warrant article to ask for design bid funds. You rightly alluded to the fact that you probably wouldn't ask for those unless and until you knew that the site was suitable both to build on and to be able to create the access to 109. So I assume you will have some recommendations, and Molly will probably be involved in this with respect to what that means and how we go forward and what that looks like from a timing perspective.
Yeah. Molly, do you want to jump in? Or I can.
Yeah, you can start. I'll jump in.
Okay. Yeah, the answer is we're going to come to you with something. We're not going to come to you, I'm 90% sure, with let's go out and get hire an architect and do some design work. We're not going to be there. We do need the location first. The location is absolutely critical. And if it's going to be in one of those two sites that have a flat piece of ground, and we think that makes sense, we have to know that we have access to High Street before we go do that. So what we may be doing is you're not going to buy any land for High Street, even though the town owns it, until you know it's going to be able to do what you want it to do. And the other nice thing about that piece of land that I'm thinking about is it's not only a fire station could go there, but other things could go there in the future. So I think you're going to need a study, and you're going to have to hire the proper people to do that, engineers or whatever, to do the soil testing, et cetera, to make sure that that is a spot that you can do. And then you're going to have to come back at a subsequent town meeting to purchase the land or however you're going to acquire it. And then you can move forward with design plans, et cetera.
Okay. I asked that because you're highlighting a number of the interdependent dominoes that need to fall in order to be able to move forward, which is clearly going to impact time. One of the other things that we charged you with was evaluating options for short term. I don't know, I didn't get a chance yet to watch this morning's meeting, but I don't know where you guys stand with respect to what options may exist on those. I don't need to have a full debrief on all of that here tonight, other than to know that that is still on your radar and is something that will be addressed in a future update with us.
Yeah, we have not touched on that. And I feel February is going to be our month to be focusing on that. We do need, however, to know how long will that building sustain itself and be able to be used. And there, I noticed that you have on your agenda a possibility of getting a report done, and you're looking for a transfer to be able to do that. That's going to be important because we have to know how long you're going to be there. But we can, in the meantime, talk about sites. And I think there are sites to go to, but exactly what would be done, we have not discussed it.
Okay.
I could guess, but that's not my job.
No, that's right. Yep. You guys are supposed to vet and weigh those things out and come back to us with some recommendations. So
Yeah.
we will
Rob,
await those recommendations.
Rob, I have a quick question for Molly on the temporary quarters. Molly, when we worked on this before, I believe you said from the time that we pulled the trigger on a location or to go forward with temporary quarters, it would take 6 months, 180 days, start to finish to get that site ready. Is that still true?
That's about a little bit less than that. When we had planned it back in May, if it was, we had the approval in mid-May. I believe December 1st was their scheduled move-in date, so that would be to acquire the trailers and hook up the utilities. So about 5 months, 6 months, depending on the timing.
And that includes the INET.
Yeah, includes moving the item.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Joe, just to build on your question, at that time, when we were looking at that being a 6 month, we already had planning board approval for the use of that site. So I think we would need to go, if that was something that needed to be revisited, we would need to revisit with the planning board. And that may be a question for Nora.
It's
But
the zoning board of appeal, but we would need to go before the ZBA again to get the special permit.
okay. So just
Yep.
something to factor in with the timeline and the sequence of the dominoes that need to fall.
Right, and that was planning board, zoning board did weigh in when I suggested moving forward sooner than later on the temp quarters road. So I'm fully aware of that.
Right, I'm just, we don't have approval of something specific yet, right? That's all.
How long is the zoning board approval good for, Molly?
It's good for 1 year, so it expired last November.
Okay.
Time is an issue, it's a real issue when I think of costs. The longer we wait, the more expensive this is getting. And the problem is we can only move so quickly, fast. So,
All right, thank you, Ford, for the update.
yes, sir.
And we will now move to our next agenda item that Ford foreshadowed, which is something that I think, Molly, you're going to take us to with respect to the current FS1 review of the apparatus bay.
Right. So this is a request for a $28,000 select board reserve fund transfer to retain a structural engineering consultant to evaluate the structural capacity of the existing FS1 apparatus bay. So the goal of this study would be to provide the town, the select board, the steering committee with clear and actionable information about the short-term viability of the apparatus floor and the scaffolding beneath it, including what equipment can be supported in the apparatus bay and whether additional reinforcement is needed underneath. So we'd be looking to answer the questions: what needs to be done? How soon does it need to be done? How long would it take to install? How much would it cost? And what would be the operational impacts on any one of those decisions? So while the full report is expected to take a few weeks, the consultant has committed to providing the findings by the end of February so that the information can inform upcoming discussions about town meeting related planning. So if we needed to go in the direction of adding a warrant article for that, we would have the ability time-wise to do that before the FinCom public hearing.
Right, and just thinking about some of those interdependent dominoes, if that study were to come back and say that there was significant shoring up of that floor needed and that had an operational impact where the department couldn't operate out of that building for a period of time, we would need to be advancing what Joe was asking about just now with respect to temporary ops.
Exactly. So what Ford and I have discussed for February is talking about there's in my head sort of two or three, maybe three options that are off the top of my head. One is putting money into the existing FS1. That would be a pause of a conversation waiting on the results of this study. One of the options is what Joe was alluding to, the temporary ops at the American Legion. And then the third option being the Deerfield School, now that it is being transferred over to the care, custody, and control of the select board. We're working with Mike Perkins on how much work can go into a building without any code requirements being triggered and what the mechanics are of that. So the steering committee would be reviewing option, what I just said, 2 and 3, while we wait for this consultant to come back with the answer for answer 1.
Yeah. Some of the challenge with that is some of the timing related delays that Ford is talking about, because not only is the approval of the special permit only good for a year until we do something, even if we did something, I think the duration of the entire special permit is maxed out at 3 years. So we would need to
Maxed
be
out at 3 years.
completed with building whatever the recommended solution was by the expiration of that temporary quarters.
Yes, the special permit, it's good for 1 year and it can be renewed for an additional 2 years for a maximum of 3 years.
Okay,
May I say something?
sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I am alluding to is, we're looking, if you moved as quickly as we would like to move, you're 2 to 3 years, you're probably 3 years before they're out of that station or out of a temporary station into a new station. And that's also the cost. We're adding costs to this project by doing all that.
Okay.
Rob,
So-
oh, no, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe,
Okay.
please.
Thanks, Rob. Molly, the structural study done before was done by Weston Sampson, correct?
That was the original study a number of years ago. Is it EDG who's the consultant? They're the structural engineers that have been going out on a regular basis and inspecting it. They have access to the Weston and Sampson report, and they are taking all of the documentation that they have to start as the basis for their recommendation.
So my question is, why wouldn't we go back to the original engineering firm, Weston Sampson?
I don't know when that study was completed. That was before my time. And so it would be either going back to Weston and Sampson to complete a study. They haven't been back into the building in several years, or using the consultant EDG who has been regularly going into the building and has more up-to-date information. I think
I get who's been going into the building, but I'm also keenly aware of Weston Sampson's reputation.
Right. My only question, Joe, is Molly is here requesting funds to initiate this right away. And I imagine that contacting Weston and Sampson and getting them to provide a quote on it would at least push this off 1 meeting, if not 2 meetings. So I'm concerned about, continued delay. So I don't have a preference either way with respect to the engineers. I'm mindful of all these discussions of timing and the interdependencies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can give you the date in a minute, Molly, on the Weston Sampson study, but yeah, I don't want to do a bum's rush. I want to do it right. Did you contact Weston Sampson about?
I did
quote?
not.
So just a single. Well, okay.
Is there any reason to believe that EDG would not be competent to perform this?
Well, I'm not suggesting that, Marianne. What I am suggesting is the first words out of Weston Sampson is, why didn't you do what we said the first time?
And at this point, that would be helpful. How?
I'm sorry?
I said, at this point, that would be helpful. How?
I guess having reviewed the Weston Sampson study, I may have a little more respect for their first study.
So you think they would do a better job, is what you're saying, I guess, to Marianne's question.
Personally, my experience with them working on the Conservation Commission, on having them for several studies, I think they do excellent work. But again, yeah, no, I'm fine, Rob.
I have no qualms either way, Joe. If you feel really strongly and you want to wait and get a quote from them, we can put off a decision to approve this transfer and get a quote. I don't know, Stephanie, what we've got, capacity wise beyond the 28. So we can revisit that at the right time. Marianne, do you have any thoughts you want to weigh in with?
I think the theme of this discussion in part is time is money. So I am concerned about that. I hear, Ford hearing that our committee wants this information. We all want the information. I didn't know going into this there was any issue in terms of the firm. Clearly, we want to do it right, Joe, to your point. And I just don't have any information right now as far as vetting the merits of EDG versus Weston Sampson. So, Joe, I want you to be satisfied with what we're doing here. Time is of the essence, as you have said many times. I do see that Pat has his hand up. I don't know if that's germane to this, Rob.
I was going to call on him when you were
Sorry.
concluded. That's all right. That's fine. Town
Well,
council.
I could get my hand down. Technology is improved. Technological skills are improving. I see two issues here. I see an appropriation that you're going to have no matter who does it. And then I see a purchasing issue or a selection issue. So I would recommend that you ask for the appropriation tonight, and then we can work on who gets that appropriation moving forward.
The only problem with the appropriation being voted tonight is the presumption is that the cost of the study from Weston and Sampson would be $28,000 or less.
So then what I would recommend is that you ask for an appropriation. Why don't you ask for appropriation up to 35,000? I'm not sure you'd want to change. You have a good idea that the company that has been in there is going to be 28,000. If Weston and Sampson is more than 25% more, I'm not sure you'd want to go to them.
I'm fine with that, Pat.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion with respect to getting the study done regarding the structural capacity of the FS1 apparatus bay.
I'd be happy to do so. I make a motion, select board approve the transfer of $35,000 from the select board reserve fund to retain a structural engineering consultant firm to evaluate the structural capacity of the Fire Station 1 apparatus bay.
I second that.
Point of order before you second, Marianne. I would like to have that be approved the transfer of up to $35,000.
So I'm going to move your motion up to 35,000. Good point, Rob.
Thank you,
And
Joe.
seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Marianne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Molly, thank you very much for that.
Night, everybody.
Thank you, Ford.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Ford.
Yep.
We are going to move now into new business, and I believe, Molly, you have some good news for us with respect to an integrated contract with the Westwood Police Superiors.
So this is the item before you is approval of a fully integrated contract between the town of Westwood and the Westwood Police Superior Officers Association. So the board had approved the memorandum of agreement for FY 27 through 29 back in early December. This contract simply incorporates the language in the MOA into a fully integrated agreement. There's no substantive changes since the board saw that MOA. The association has approved this integrated contract, and this step just completes the process and puts the agreement into final form.
Questions from either of my colleagues?
No.
I have some questions. Molly, I sent those to you this afternoon. Did you get a chance to look at those?
Yep. So I took a look at them. What your email was requesting were substantive changes to the agreement, which we do at the table before the MOA. In order to look at those, what you were suggesting, I would have to reopen negotiations. And because we've already settled, there's no requirement for the superiors to do that if they didn't feel.
Right. Yep.
I did make a note of them for when we go back to the table to to put those forward as town proposals.
I'll just go on the record as saying I'll never be in favor of extending sick leave. I think it's, Molly, you and I addressed that in an earlier policy. I think we should be consistent across all the work groups. As Mary Ann would say, you hop on a slippery slope when you start doing that.
There was no change to the sick leave policy as part of the MOA.
And I must have misread it.
Other questions, comments?
I'll be happy to make a motion, Rob. Let's move this along. Make a motion, the select board signed the integrated contract between the town of Westwood and the Westwood Police Superior Officers Association.
I second that.
All right, roll call, Joe,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay. Thank you, Molly, for that. Next on the agenda, we have liaison reports. I don't know if any of you have had any material updates from our last meetings. I would say there's one that I would like to, that's not on here as a liaison report, but Stephanie, at our next meeting, would you mind, and Molly, if you would have Todd join us? There was a request that came in regarding some misunderstanding of funds from our pedestrian bike safety advisory group that I would like to be able to address and deal with that.
Sorry, which meeting, Rob? Did you say long range or this one?
No, the next one of our select board meetings.
Okay, yep.
Any
Nothing
other,
to report, Rob, from me.
Joe, anything from you?
No, when the snow and the rain go away, I'm happy to get back out in the woods looking for the dog park thing, but at the moment it's not looking good for a few months. But we are still alive and well. People ask me, it's still on I'm going to say it's on the select board's radar.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I believe we have some minutes from our January 5th meeting to approve.
I thought they were outstanding, Rob, as always.
I just had the one change that I had sent to Tish. I don't know if that got to the two of you.
No, I didn't send them yet.
Okay, just the only change that I had made, and I'll make it as a friendly amendment to the minutes here tonight, is that with respect to the housing partnership, housing production plan, I had recommended that be presented to both the Long Range Financial Planning Committee as well as the FS1 Steering Committee. So it had said either or, and I had recommended both. So I don't know. I know that they're coming before Long Range at some point soon, and I don't know if that has hit the FS1 committee, but I think it's probably something that would be germane to their discussions as well. So that was the only change to the minutes that as they were submitted.
I'd be happy to make a motion with that friendly reminder, I'll call it, for the January 5th meeting minutes as
Revised.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, Joe,
aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Reminder that our next meeting is next Tuesday, February 3rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom, following town meeting on Monday night. We will be going into executive session to discuss one issue pursuant to Mass General Law 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation involving the property at 665 Clabbertree Street, discussion of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were held in open session. We will not be returning to open session. Can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All roll call, Joe,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Good night, everybody. Stay warm and good luck with the snow.